Hi, and welcome everyone to another edition of Tina's Take on AI. I am very excited to talk to Nils Gransberg today to talk about how AI is being used in his business. And as you know, we started with AI in education, and we've been migrating to different types of businesses and how AI is being used as a tool to either advance the business or to make it more efficient or to grow sales. And so it's really exciting to be part of these conversations because one of the things that I'm learning is that everybody is using it differently. And it's very exciting to be at the forefront of all of this innovation and really utilization. So again, this program is sponsored by the growthstack.ai, which is a business strategy partner that uses AI implementation as part of the way to deliver results and growth to companies. With that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Niels, and ask you to talk a little bit about your business, which is, by the way, incredibly fascinating, and how you're using AI today.
Well, thanks, Tina. You're too kind. So I'm Nils Gransberg, and I'm the vice president of Gransberg and Associates. We're a kind of a unicorn when it comes to the consulting world. We operate in a fairly unique space as primarily a owner's representative, owner's advisor, a construction engineering management consultant. We do a lot of work in infrastructure. We specialize in complex project delivery, mega projects, and we also do a lot of continuing education, training, and then federally funded research. So we've got one of our kind of feathers in our hats is, G&As. All the folks we have on staff either have significant construction experience as well as advanced degrees. So we've got 3 PhDs on staff. I'm one, my father's another, and my partner, Ricardo Tapia, he's our third, and he runs our office in Panama. So it's an exciting business to be in. Every day is a different new intellectual puzzle to solve. It's like we were just talking before the call. We've got a new contract where we're helping the with Department of Energy with lashing up contracts for a new nuclear waste management or waste handling facility. Over $1 billion, 5-6 years. In construction more than likely, and so helping them, get their procurements right up front. So
Yeah.
yeah, and so we do a lot of stuff kind of in that space as well
Yeah,
as
we were talking about this
yeah.
earlier, like just like bridges and I mean infrastructure in the most fundamental way, which is, critical. I mean, we all hear about how infrastructure in America has been like really neglected. And so, I mean, to find companies like yourself, I'm sure you're in high demand to really like reevaluate the engineering of some of those infrastructure, like those core infrastructure projects.
Yeah, it's infrastructure is a challenge here in the United States. We have a lot of aging infrastructure, and I think we've got a lot of deferred work the can has been kicked down the road
Yeah.
just because of the kind of the funding challenges we have.
It's funding, right? It's funding. I came from a funding
Yeah,
background. It's funding, really. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, and you look at the how much effort it takes to be able to plan, program, and
Yeah.
allocate, funds to these major highway infrastructure or water energy infrastructure. It takes years and years typically, especially when you've got the public funding it. So I think there's been we've seen quite a bit of growth in public-private partnerships as well, which is something that we've done a lot of work in. So where you're able to bring some private capital in to be able to help finance, operate, some of these public infrastructure where there's a distinct need, but not enough public money available.
I mean, my previous background was Wall Street, right? So I know of a lot of infrastructure funds that have just exploded in the last few years, just because they've sort of filled that gap in what the public funding is, because it's just hard to get a municipal bond out anymore. Like it's just really difficult, and that's what municipal bonds are meant to do, is fund these types of projects. So it's I do remember my days of raising capital in municipal bonds. It was not easy.
No, it's not. You look at the amount of effort that goes into it, especially with just the personalities.
Yeah.
and being able to make sure that all the math lines up as well as the political priorities of various people with influence. It's always a challenge. And then, the challenge we run into quite a bit is we'll come in after a lot of times after a bond has already been let, and
Yeah.
we've got a project, and they go, we think we're going to be, you know, 10% over our bond limit. What do we do?
Yeah.
And so being able to come up with solutions to be able to innovate in the way you do business so that you can get a project done within the funds that are allocable, and being able to increase the likelihood of success. That's kind of you know, that's at the end of the day, that's what I always try to do is help our clients finish on time and on budget, and if it means we spend every penny we've got, spend every penny you got. You save $0 when you're spending millions of dollars on
All right.
construction. It's better to be smart about how you're using it, right? And get the most out of it.
We talked about this offline, which was, we always feel like none of these projects ever finish in the initial budget. And of course, they take so long to build that factors change. So maybe, I know we're off topic, but it's just fascinating to me personally how, you know, eh, the projects evolve both in time and in scope and then in price. Like maybe if you could spend like 2 minutes on that just because.
Yeah, no, it's actually probably one of those common things you see in any kind of project.
Yeah.
And my one of my bucket list research things is that if I could find somebody to fund me doing research into optimism bias, that's going to be my I'll tilt at that windmill any day of the week. But we always start out with incomplete knowledge,
Yeah.
and that incomplete knowledge gives us a higher level of confidence than we is probably realistically should have. So we always kind of assume that it's going to go better, or it's going to be done quicker, or we're going to be able to get more done with less. And that's a feature of the human psyche, which thank goodness we have it, because otherwise, if we didn't, we wouldn't take risks. We wouldn't try different things. But the challenge is, I think, in major infrastructure projects, especially when you look at, you're pushing the $1 billion limit, you want to be as brutally realistic as possible. You
Yeah.
need to be brutally pragmatic, and that's where I think the AI
I just
tie-in here is
AI is probably helpful in that.
well, and that's the thing is because we do a lot of risk simulation work, work up on projects saying, okay, what's the risk profile look like that this project right now, and we're 3-4 years out from actually looking to pull the trigger and get started,
Yeah.
right? That's one thing, and that's gonna evolve as we go. But where we have the ability to reach back and do some analysis with some machine learning tools, it can really sharpen that up nice. I mean, and we used that before to be able to, you know, come up with that initial list. Hey, what's the likelihood, right? And then, you can use that to essentially gain confidence or build certainty into your model. So you're
Yeah.
more likely to be successful.
Well, it's so interesting to me because, there's so many applications of AI, right? We all know that, and it's such a general term. But when we had this conversation earlier, I feel like the more complex the job, the more valuable AI is just to sort it all out, to give you some clarity. And maybe you can talk a little bit about that because I feel like that's the perfect use of it.
Yeah, it's a great application. I think there's a lot of really interesting use cases for AI. But I would agree with you with that when it comes to complexity. The challenge with complexity is that there are only so many variables that we can really wrap our arms around. And when we try to model something, I mean, and we talk about models. Models can be very simple to very complex. A simple model can be a project budget. I mean, that's essentially what it is. You're taking and you're trying to abstract this project or whatever you're doing into a budget of, here's the costs and
Yeah.
such. So it's a very simple model to ones that are very complex, right? And I think the challenge is where we start with professional judgment, right? Start with our experience. We
Yeah.
should then supplement that with the ability to look at emerging trends, right? To look for the things that are non-obvious. the non sequiturs in the information where you would not otherwise see a pattern, right? And that pattern emerges, however, when we're using something like a, large language model or a
Yeah,
deep
yeah.
learning that's focused in on this kind of specific.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, I enjoyed our earlier conversation, and I'm really enjoying this one too because we're honing in a little bit more now. And when you think about applications, yours is the perfect industry, right? Because it's complex, it's long term, it's all the things that AI can really be a valuable tool in sort of predicting. In terms of costs, I mean, it can actually build these sort of future models, right? That allows you to. Are you using it to create custom modules?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
Actually, I first dabbled in this stuff. Well, I can't say really first dabbled in it, but my kind of one of my earlier dabblings in it was when I was working on my dissertation research, and it was essentially building a machine learning tools to model final costs of projects using a very small amount of information on the front end.
yeah,
Something as simple as a narrative scope and very small select amount of data. And we've actually used these tools for several of our clients. One of them was Caltrans, the DOT out in California. We helped them build a forecasting tool that they used for their master planning and help them shave about 1% off their total program each year, just in contingency from being able to say, here's the characteristics of a project that
yeah,
actually affect its cost, and then tune in on what those are. And actually, we found was you actually don't need a whole bunch of sample projects
yeah,
to
yeah,
be able to accurately forecast it. And we found that, in some cases, two or three projects that were highly, highly similar, we could use to get, somewhere around within plus or minus one standard deviation of the mean for the actuals. And so, but one of the things I think that's interesting about this kind of work, especially in the construction sector, is you can't abide by all of the statistical rules of thumb that are used in your standard statistics. So I always get in trouble with the professors on this one. They get mad at me and they're like, "Well, n needs to equal 32 for it to be significant." And I said, "Well, show me 32 projects that are the same, and they don't exist."
yeah,
Because there's so many variables in it. I could have the same project, same plans, same architect, engineer, same contractor, and do it 3 times, and each one of them is going to be different.
yeah,
Different weather, different market conditions, maybe different subcontractors. There's too many variables for us to control. So when
right.
we try to over control it by saying, "Oh, we're going to have all these things," what we end up is building noise into our models. That's one of the things I think is an interesting place, especially when it comes to being able to use some, machine learning, AI models for this sort of thing, is it helps us be able to
Yeah,
eliminate some of that noise, right?
yeah, and it's only
Focus
going
in
to
on
get
the things that
sharper,
are
right?
actually determinative. Yeah.
It's going to get sharper as it's learning about the different projects. I mean, I was thinking about what you're saying for like just listeners, like in terms of their ideal clients. Like when you're looking at ideal clients, it allows you to sort of identify some of the characteristics of your ideal client and then create sort of a whole program around that, which is something that we do at the Growth Stack. But I kind of look at it and I go, it's the same principles. You're just applying it to bridges and tunnels and other infrastructure
Yeah.
products, right? It's projects.
Yeah.
It's the same principles, which is, hey, take a few things that we actually think are critically important and then replicate it, and
Yeah,
that's kind of what you're
train
doing.
your model. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the thing is it's really all about training. And I think we talked about this before we started today, about how you have to have someone in the loop. You got to have a human in the loop, right? And the problem is the thing not problem, but they have to be someone who knows what they're doing, right? They need to understand the process itself. And so if you're doing financial modeling, right, they need to be somebody who is eyeballs deep in how finances right? If there's somebody who's in construction, they need to be the same thing when it comes to that.
Yeah.
Because the problem is you can't treat this like a black box, where this industrial model of I'm going to pull the lever, and then I'm going to punch the button, right, over and over, like I'm in the factory and expect things to come out great. Because if you don't know what wrong looks like, how can you tell
Yeah.
if your model's doing the right thing?
Yeah, it's like the Goldman report that says, all these jobs are going to be replaced. But if you keep reading, it doesn't say that. It says the ones who know how to use it are going to be invaluable. They're going to be golden. It's the ones who don't learn how to use it that are going to lose their jobs. So it's kind of like what we were just talking about. Like you have to know what to tell it to do, because it's only good as what you tell it to do, and it will create the response. But it doesn't actually think and replace a human brain. You know it's gonna make things faster, it's gonna make things clearer,
Yeah.
but it's got to be led to where you want it to go.
Well, our challenge, I think, as a species is we like to anthropomorphize things. I mean, look at what we do with our animals. We're like, oh, this is my little buddy. Here's what he's thinking. How do you know they're thinking? I don't know what my dog's thinking, right? I just know he's giving me those eyes, and I'm making assumptions and stuff.
Yeah.
The problem with, and this is, I think, the biggest challenge with, especially with the LLMs, for the chatbots, is you will never meet a person who is more completely confident than a chatbot.
Yeah.
Because they don't know not to be confident, right? They have no lived experience. They are not a person. They're literally a bunch of math. Math is always confident. Here's the answer.
I was having a conversation with somebody, and he's like, "Well, I named it," because I was like, "I can't talk." I named it, and it's like one of my best friends, and I'm like, by the way, it is incredibly intuitive, like the way that it responds to you, like It feels like a best buddy, right? It does, but you have to kind of take a step back and go, wait a sec, it's telling me what I want to hear. It's not necessarily telling me what I should be hearing. It's telling me what it thinks I want to hear. And so, but it's incredibly valuable. Don't get me wrong. Like sometimes, I wrote a book and I wrote it into AI, and it was like the perfect copywriter. I kept saying to me, editor would be like, you got to fix this and work on this. And because someone said to me, "What did they write it?" I'm like, "No, they didn't write it. I wrote it because it's personal stories, but they framed it for me to make it more efficient." It's like, so instead of spending thousands of dollars with a copywriter, you had a live copywriter who fixed it as you were writing it. You're like,
yeah,
I should have thought of that. So it's really intuitive. It's like incredible. But
very much so.
As you said, it's all about, like, it can't write the story for me. It can only tell me what it thinks needs to be fixed in terms of like sequence or things like that.
Only as good as the prompt.
Yeah.
Yeah. It really is. It's only as good as the prompt, and I think that's also where, having some of this, just very brutal pragmatism is really helpful, in this space, because you got to understand that it's the limitations are also self-imposed. And in many ways, that chatbot is a mirror of you. It's holding the mirror back to you, and it's talking to you in the way you talk to it. So you're gonna be like, wow, it really gets me. Yeah, it's mimesis, my friend. I mean, so don't forget that it's a bunch of math. It's great math, awesome math. I love math. I'm an engineer. I mean, who doesn't love math? But at the same time, though, it's not a person. So, I think though that it's also part of the charm of it, and that's what makes it kind of fun to actually use some of this, and and having access to these LLMs the way we have them now, it's just unreal. I mean, the stuff you can do with them.
And they're moving so fast, right? It's like every other couple of weeks you get another iteration of something. Like, today is like Sora 2. Everybody's talking about Sora 2. Like, I don't know what it'll be a month from now, but it's just incredible to me how it's all, it's one of the reasons I told you we don't customize anything, because I'm like, I made that mistake. I'm not customizing anything.
Yeah.
It's obsolete by the time you finish. Yeah, it's like it's gone. You get the next version of something like 2 weeks later. It's like, forget it. So tell me now, in addition to sort of modeling out costing, like where else are you using AI effectively?
couple different places specifically. One, just from my personal time standpoint, I'm using it quite a bit to reduce the amount of time I have to do rote
Yeah.
or repetitive work or stuff that isn't necessarily productive, like non-productive work.
Yeah. That's perfect.
So yeah, I mean, like, I do a lot of continuing education, a lot of custom training, and oftentimes we'll get asked by a client, hey, can you teach this course on this and change these modules to this other thing here that I may not have done. I'm like, all right, so half the time what I'll do just to get started, just to get past the whole blank page thing, is I'll just say, give me, recommend 4 different outlines for
Yeah.
teaching this specific thing. What kind of stuff is out there? Give me some links and stuff. And then then it gets me started, right?
Right.
And off I go. And instead of dinking around on, trying to perfect my Google search, my
Good.
Boolean search routine, then I'm actually doing things that are,
Yeah.
that are productive, and I'm spending less time just like,
Yeah.
thinking around on the internet or
I mean,
whatnot.
the key is it gives you the starting point, right? Because the nuance is what you do with it. It's not like it's going to give you an outline of something that you can build from. And I think that's really valuable. Like it saves you a lot of time getting going. And then,
Yeah.
You're either going to agree with things or you're going to adjust things, etc. So yeah, root and routine, I think are really, really valuable in like I was just having a call today with somebody on coaching. So talking about this, like we have one of the things that we've been developing is a live sales coaching tool. It blew my mind. Like I'm a tech person, right? But I'm like, oh my God, how did you guys come up with this? It's fantastic, Like, and it's just like it goes to show you that the tech is just evolving so quickly, and it's on an individual basis. Like I come from an industry where you put somebody in a room for 8 hours and you try to hope that they get something from it, and now all of a sudden it's like it's individual, custom for them, and I'm like, oh my God, this is so valuable. Like it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about just where I see the opportunities in this. Are you using it in terms of coaching or training yet?
Not necessarily. Actually, one of the applications that we're doing right now. So I'm on a couple different committees. I'm on one with Design Build Institute of America. Another one is the Engineering Joint Contract Committee. So we write standard form documents for engineered projects. And on the DBIA one, actually, I got asked by the to be on the owner education side, which is right up my alley. So I was like, oh yeah, no, that's terrible. I'll definitely, so I jumped right on that. But yeah, but they've got some training on design build practices, and design build is a very, very different way of approaching public projects where than most public agencies are comfortable with. It's not a low bid competitive. The competition is totally different. The designer works for the design builder, not for the owner. So it's like totally different kind of cultural thing. So they have a bunch of best practices and training and whatnot. And they've gone through and updated some of these. And so we have a whole bunch of these training webinars essentially on how you do it, design build done right. And so, I said, I tell you what, we need to go review them. I've got that. So what we're doing is we're taking and we're converting them all into transcripts.
Yeah.
We're running them through a in-house LLM, and just having them identify where there's gaps or changes or mismatches between what the best practices were that were issued in 2013 versus the 2023 ones, right? And then we can focus in on just those areas. And so where we've got to go back and redo a webinar, redo some training, we can focus in on the ones that need it the most. And the ones that don't, we can verify and go, these are good, off they go, right?
That's great.
And so an hour and a half webinar, then I can analyze that in like 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's amazing. I have a similar tool. I know, it's crazy, right? It's absolutely crazy.
That would have taken me 5 or 6 hours, maybe the whole day, to just one webinar to go through that and make sure that it's up to date.
It's so amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Are there any other, I could talk to you forever because I think this is so interesting. But when we talk about what do you recognize as being sort of success for your business? Like in terms of, is it completion of projects on budget? Is it in time frame? Like what do you consider to be successful?
Well, I
Is
often
the question? I don't know. I just
Yeah,
got to
that's actually a good question. That's a good question, and one I probably haven't
turn
thought
into
too
us. I don't
deeply
know.
about because I usually spend most of my time focused on my clients'
Yeah.
definition of success, And for clients, that's typically them achieving their objectives, helping them identify those objectives and then achieve them while being able to deliver whatever they need within that time frame and those constraints, So kind of like figuring out how to get the most out of the constrained environment that they're in. For us as a business, though, I think I look at success as being number one. I cover my payroll, so I don't care at the end of the day. Like if I even if we have enough for everybody but me, everybody else gets it,
Yeah.
right? And that's just how it goes. So being able to do that, but then I think also long term is what we see is we being able to develop long-term relationships,
Yeah.
with our clients where they continue to come to us and say, "Hey, you're the expert on this," or "We trust you,"
Yeah.
And so that kind of the trust and the collaboration and being able to be seen as a valuable, trusted, reliable partner, that's really the core piece of our success. And just doing everything we can to build upon that because as a consultant, reputation is everything. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely everything.
Yeah, I totally get it, and I can completely relate to payroll. It's like I've run multiple businesses, and the first thing you do is pay everybody else first, and then you're like, okay, is there anything left for me? Because I kind of need to pay. I got to pay rent now, or mortgage or something. But I do think
Next quarter.
exactly, exactly. But what I do think is so fascinating is, you've got to be in a field where there are not a lot of competitors. So, repeat customers would be a natural outcome of the kind of the projects you work on. And so I think it's really interesting to me as the tech develops, there's going to be, I mean, do you think it's going to impact I don't know what the right term, I'm thinking barrier to entry, but it's probably not the right terminology in terms of uh, broadening the competitive landscape. But it goes back to what you talked about. They still have to know
Yeah.
enough to use AI, right? So
Yeah.
I'm not
You
sure.
know
It's just
that
a provoking question that just came to
yeah,
me.
no, that's a good question. And I think so one of the things before this, before I came on full time with GNA, I worked in the public sector for the majority of my professional career, either as a capital projects manager for the state of Oklahoma. I retired from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Worked in federal or state side of construction for 20 some odd years. And when I told my old man, I said, "Dad, I love this business you do. I think it's really cool. I'd love to go into business with you." And he says, "Guess what, son? This business is me. I've got the PhD, I've got the expertise, I've written all these, and the man's written the book on everything, I swear. When it comes to project delivery or collaborative delivery, he's done so much of it. He cut so much thought. And he said, if you want to do this, you got to build your own expertise. So that's the kind of thing I think that is a little nice about this sort of
Yeah,
business is that you really have to have the expertise. And so being able to mix those two together with both that, the academic side and having years of actual construction experience doing this kind of stuff really helps. But I do think that where the technology comes in is it's going to, I think, for us specifically, I think it's going to give some of us smaller firms like us, like Gransberg and Associates, the ability to extend our reach
yeah,
and be able to handle more volume of work. I mean, my challenge is always how many hours are there in the day?
right, right.
And there's only so many. So if I can be more efficient in how I use those hours, I can generate more revenue for my firm, right? By being more efficient, And so where I can take something that I would have otherwise had to spend 6 hours or 8 hours on, and I can do it in an hour or 30 minutes,
Yeah,
boom, that's 7.5 hours,
yeah,
7 to 7.5 hours. I can bill against something else, you
right.
know, that needs
Are
me.
you doing global
Yeah.
projects or is it mostly US?
Oh, we do both.
Yeah,
We work both internationally here, mostly in the U.S., but we worked abroad. I mean, like I said, we've got our partner firm in Panama. We got we've had a long relationship with the canal authority down there, so help them get their that canal expansion done earlier about
Involved in
early
the boat that
2010.
got stuck? The boat that got stuck in the Panama Canal?
Oh, the Suez Canal? No, no, thank goodness.
Oh, goodness, wow. Oh my.
No,
So
that's the other. That's the other.
the other canal, sorry. I was like, the canal, apologies. Yeah, I was like, oh gosh, that was you can't even that it's like fiction. You can't even imagine that would happen. I was just like,
It's wild. Yeah.
it's wild. Yeah.
But that's the kind of stuff that's why, trying to model every single variable to try to control everything is impossible. And when you try to over control, what you end up doing is getting your answer wrong.
Yeah, yeah.
Because, so it's better to simplify your models. I mean, and really, like, especially when it comes to complexity, simplify it, focus in on the things that actually move the needle. And I think, because I think our kind of, default position is, oh, well, that's, we're going to add more stuff into this model to make it a better model. It's like the German solution to engineering. There's no solution that's engineered that couldn't be over engineered, right? And
Yeah.
when we're looking at modeling it, that's kind of the opposite. I mean, at least that's been my experience. When in doubt, throw it out.
Yeah.
And when you find things that are marginal, and what they do is they add noise. So if I'm trying to get smart and be able to be predictive, I really want to focus on only the things that are predictive. And because I can't really realistically
Yeah.
model all those variables. I can't control for some, joker getting a ship stuck in the Suez Canal and how that's going to impact my lead times on structural steel, right? Some other commodity that I've got. Yeah, I mean, I don't know when the longshoremen are going to go on strike at the port of LA. I don't. I can't know that, So, I want to focus in on things that I can know and the things that actually move the needle.
Yeah, this is great. So I wonder, is there any other closing comments you want to make? Because I think that this conversation has been so fascinating and AI is evolving all the time. Especially, I could see the use in these mega projects in terms of just, being from an organizational perspective and also from a execution perspective. So I don't know if you have anything that you want to sort
I
of
do.
close
I
with.
got a couple of things I'd probably like to share. So I think when we're looking at right now, we're really just kind of scratching the surface of what we have. I think the opportunity to be able to integrate information from different sources, especially the stuff that's not sorted or organized, raw data,
Yeah.
is there's a lot of potential for that. I think there's some real opportunities right now, especially when you look at things like quality management and quality control. I think being able to bring AI applications into that is gonna have some real potential high return, high payoff. It's one of the challenges in mega projects is managing quality because you have an incredible amount of products, submittals, work being done, plans, specs, different subs and whatnot. And so, ensuring that quality standards are being achieved is always been a challenge. So you've got quality assurance, quality control, but being able to take and integrate those
Yeah.
and do that pattern analysis, right? What are the patterns that are emerging? Because you find things, we found in the past where it's, all of a sudden you've got, it's like, hey, there's like, 2 or 3 days delay on getting approvals on submittals. What's going on? And if you can find and drill down to those, you can solve those issues before they become a full-blown catastrophe. And
Yeah.
I think that's where you have there's some real potential for some of these applications. So quality control, quality management, I think is a huge piece. And then also I think from the administrative side,
Yeah.
one of the things that we've seen and have dabbled a bit with is looking at things like contracts.
Yeah.
Being able to reduce the amount of time that it takes to develop contracts or simplify contracts, and being able to look at things and do, some extended analysis on clauses in those contracts tied to how well they're able to actually manage or mitigate risk, or whether they expose you to more risk, right? And being able to look and say, okay, what's the effectiveness in case law? And be able to pull those in, because we run into that all the time with owners who will put in clauses that they think are going to defend them against all sorts of stuff. And then they end up doubling, they end up paying twice for it because it's something they couldn't rely on. It rendered it, inoperative, and now they're in court and they're paying for it. So those are the kind of stuff I think that can help. There's some potential in there. And I think probably the last thing is this. So a few years ago, I heard this guy gave a talk on AI, and he had a really great metaphor. And he said it's that there's a lot of fear with people in AI, and it's this kind of like, we're all going to lose our jobs and Skynet's going to take over, right? And he said, we've been through this before with technology, and he gave an example of the automated teller machine, the ATM. I bet you there's folks who don't even know what ATM stands for now, right? But when it first came out, there was a lot of worry about it, of bank tellers losing their jobs. We're going to fire all the bank tellers. Now you got an ATM.
Yes, the tellers. I'm like, who's it was the tellers.
Right. And so, but what you've seen is actually what happened was the tellers didn't get fired. Some of them, either got retrained or went to different jobs, but most of the tellers just ended up doing other things that added more value to the banks instead of just passing money out. If I can automate passing money out, automate it. Let my people who I need to be able to do things that human brain is only capable of doing, focus on those things, and I think that's kind of a more realistic view of what AI is going to do. It's revolutionary, of course.
Yeah.
But it's not like some sort of disaster waiting to happen to like run people into jobs. Now don't get me wrong. There's going to be some schmuck out there who's like, I'm going to fire all my people and replace them with AI, right? That's going to happen, unfortunately, because, we've got people in positions of authority and wealth who have very little moral fiber. But in most cases, it's not going to be the case.
To that point, using the teller analogy, the reality is that they are now customers. They're the face of the bank, right? They're the customer service face. And so when we talk about AI, we talk about the fact that the humanness is only going to become more human, right? That's the machine learning will take over the routine, and the human qualities that make us human are just going to magnify if you know how to do it properly, I think.
Yeah. Which is where education and training so critical. We gotta make sure people understand how to use it. We gotta make sure they understand what they're doing.
Yeah. It's a mirror.
Yeah, it is. It's a mirror.
So I gotta tell you, this is fascinating. Thank you so much, Nils. I really appreciate the conversation. And for anyone who would like to reach out, I will have your information. Like, obviously, if you want to put out, I'll put out your email.
Be happy to share it.
Yeah, email or at least your website with the podcast. And thank you everyone for joining us. Nils, if you could hang on while I just.
Thank you so much, Tina. It's been fun.
It's been fun. Hang on a second.
All right.